Autumn's Embrace, Chapter 16. The cold grip of winter had begun to loosen as the days inched toward spring, but Willow Creek remained wrapped in its blanket of snow. The early signs of change were subtle: a little more daylight, the occasional bird singing, and the way the sun warmed the porch steps of the farmhouse a little longer each afternoon. But for Elliot, the most significant change wasn't in the weather. It was in the life he and Lily were now fully building together. The weeks since their decision to move in together had been filled with excitement and contentment, like pieces of a puzzle falling perfectly into place. They had spent long hours rearranging rooms, adding touches of Lily's warmth to every corner of the farmhouse, and planning for the future that now stretched before them. It was a future Elliot embraced with open arms, one that filled him with a sense of peace he had never known before. Today, Elliot stood in the middle of the living room, admiring the work they had done. The farmhouse, once a simple, empty space, had truly become a home. The shelves were lined with books Lily had brought from her apartment, and family photos were hung on the walls, and the couch they had picked out together filled the space in front of the fireplace. Everything felt right. Everything felt like it belonged. "Are you sure you like where I put the plants?" Lily's voice broke into his thoughts, and Elliot turned to see her standing in the doorway, her eyes shining with a playful smile. Elliot chuckled, crossing the room to join her. "You've asked me that at least 3 times, and every time I've said yes, I love it." Lily laughed softly, leaning into him as he wrapped his arm around her. "I just want it to be perfect." Elliot pressed a kiss to her forehead. "It already is." They stood together for a moment, their eyes sweeping over the living room, taking in the quiet beauty of what they had built together. It wasn't just the physical space that felt perfect. It was the life they had created within it. The sense of belonging, of partnership, of love. It filled every inch of the farmhouse. "I still can't believe how much has changed in just a few months," Lily said, her voice soft with wonder. "This place feels like it's always been ours." Elliot nodded, his heart full as he looked down at her. "It does, and it's only the beginning." Lily glanced up at him, her eyes filled with warmth. "What do you mean?" Elliot hesitated for a moment, his heart racing with anticipation. He hadn't planned on saying anything today, but the words were already forming on his lips. And as he looked into Lily's eyes, he knew there was no better time than now. Taking a deep breath, he stepped back slightly, his hand slipping from her waist to take her hands in his. "Lily," he began, his voice steady, despite the emotion welling up inside him, "these past few months with you have been everything I didn't know I needed. You've changed my life in ways I can't even begin to describe. And I know we've only just started this journey together, but I already know one thing for sure." Lily's brow furrowed slightly, her eyes searching his. "What is it?" Elliot smiled, his heart swelling with love. "I know that I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I know that what we've built together, this is it for me. You are it for me." Lily's eyes widened and her breath hitched as she realized what he was saying. Her hand trembled slightly in his, and her lips parted as she whispered, "Elliot." He dropped to one knee, his heart pounding in his chest, and pulled out a small velvet box from his pocket. "Lily Harper, will you marry me?" Lily gasped, her hands flying to her mouth as tears welled up in her eyes. For a moment she seemed too stunned to speak, but then with a soft, breathless laugh, she nodded, tears spilling over her cheeks. "Yes," she whispered, her voice shaking with emotion. "Yes, I'll marry you." Elliot's heart soared as he slid the ring onto her finger. Standing to pull her into his arms, they stood there for a long moment, wrapped in each other's embrace, the weight of the moment sinking in. This was real. This was forever. When they finally pulled back, Lily wiped at her tears, her smile wide and radiant. "I can't believe you. I didn't see that coming at all." Elliot chuckled, brushing a lock of her hair from her face. "I've been carrying that ring around for a few days, waiting for the right moment. I guess I just couldn't wait any longer." Lily laughed, shaking her head in disbelief. "You're sneaky." "I just knew what I wanted," Elliot said softly, his thumb brushing over her cheek. "And I wanted you." The rest of the day passed in a blur of happiness and celebration. They called Lily's parents to share the news, and by the end of the conversation, Carol was already talking about wedding plans. Frank, of course, congratulated them in his usual calm, supportive manner, though Elliot could hear the excitement in his voice. They spent the evening sitting by the fire, the snow still falling softly outside, talking about their future, about the wedding, about the life they would continue building together, about all the adventures that awaited them. And as they talked, Elliot felt a sense of peace settle over him that he had never known before. This was it. This was the life he had been searching for, the life he had always wanted, but hadn't known how to find. And now that he had found it, he knew that he would never let it go. The following morning, the snow had stopped, and the world outside was a glistening wonderland of white. The sun shone brightly over the snow-covered fields, casting long shadows across the landscape, and the air was crisp and cold. It was the kind of morning that made everything feel new, like a fresh start. Elliot and Lily stood on the porch together, their hands intertwined as they looked out over the peaceful beauty of the farm. The future stretched out before them, wide open and full of possibility. And for the first time in a long time, Elliot felt no fear, no doubt, no hesitation. "What do you think?" Lily asked, her voice soft as she leaned her head against his shoulders. "I think," Elliot said, his voice filled with quiet certainty, "that we're going to have a beautiful life together." Lily smiled, her hand squeezing his gently. "I think so too." They stood there for a long time, watching as the sun climbed higher in the sky, their hearts full of love and hope for the future. It was a simple moment, but it was perfect. It was a moment that marked the beginning of the rest of their lives. And as Elliot held Lily close, watching the light glint off of her engagement ring, he knew one thing for sure. He had found his home. Not just in the farmhouse, not just in Willow Creek, but in her. And as long as they were together, no matter where life took them, Elliot knew that they would always have everything they needed. They had love, they had each other, and that was enough. This was forever. Thank you for listening to Autumn's Embrace. Stay tuned for more stories on ink and imagination.